or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publisher. For more information, just visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And I welcome you, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We now present a reading of articles and features from our USA Today for Tuesday, July the 28th of 2026. And your readers today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
And I'm going to start you out on my front page. Here's my first article. Markets are guessing on the Fed's direction. The new chair, Kevin Warsh, keeps his cards close. As many Americans struggle to make ends meet, Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh has pledged to bring inflation back to its 2% target. But it remains unclear exactly how he plans to get there as the central bank heads into its July meeting. Now, the Fed often finds itself at a crossroad, balancing its dual mandate of maximum employment and stable prices. It has two main tools it uses to address these both: its balance sheet and the federal funds rate, a benchmark for interest rates. The Fed typically raises its target range for the rate to tame inflation and lowers the rate to stimulate the job market. Now, after 3 months of accelerating inflation, it slowed in June, though some forecasters do expect it may tick back up amid renewed U.S.-Iran hostilities. And after these 3 months of positive job growth, U.S. employer hiring fell in June, leaving the Fed to sort out whether the swings are just noise or the start of new trends. Now, the Fed may also be at crossroads when it comes to delivering on Warsh's promise of price stability for consumers. Many Americans don't want higher interest rate on their credit cards and their personal loans, but they also don't want prices to keep rising. Raising the Fed's benchmark interest rate could help cool inflation, but it would make borrowing more expensive. A promise to lower inflation, but no promise to hike. American consumers have faced inflation above the Fed's 2% target for 5 years. Warsh, in congressional testimony earlier in July, said inflation is a choice, and he told lawmakers it wouldn't be permanent on his watch. The Fed can't directly control prices at the grocery store or the gas pump, but Warsh has repeatedly said he views the Fed's job as ensuring price increases don't broaden into the wider U.S. economy. A rate hike, a cut, or a pause. Any one of these appears possible. Now, that depends on who you ask. The Fed, it should do all three. Warsh told lawmakers he expects another good family fight at the July meeting after FOMC members were divided on the best path for rates in June. Though Warsh did not submit his own projections, 8 members saw the Fed holding the range steady, 9 saw room to hike, and 1 saw room to cut before the end of 2026. So, where are the interest rates headed? The politics could have a say. The Federal Reserve will keep its benchmark rate steady for the rest of the year, according to the median forecast of economists polled by Reuters. But in a separate question about the chance of a rate increase in 26, most describe the likelihood as high. Now, that's a reversal from the month before, when it most viewed as low. It's been a long time since we were actually surprised by the Fed's decision, Royal has said, adding that he expects more surprise moves from the Fed under Warsh than under former chair Jerome Powell. Now, he added, however, that policymakers may hold off on a move until they can hear from the 5 task forces Warsh created to advise them on monetary policy. They are expected to deliver recommendations before the end of the year. Though Warsh has repeatedly and publicly affirmed his independence from politics, Royal and Lucan said he may be considering the potential effects of raising rates before this year's midterm elections. Raising rates into the midterms, that's almost a suicide mission for the Republicans, and I think we have to believe that Kevin Warsh understands that, they said. Adding consumers probably would blame the GOP as the party in power. If you're in Congress, you can't imagine telling the American people today, maybe 3-4 months before the midterms, that we're going to increase the interest rates on their credit card loans and their auto loans. Now, President Donald Trump, who in his second term has assured policymakers to lower rates, has said little about the Fed since Warsh was sworn in as the chair in late May. After policymakers left rates unchanged in June, Trump responded, "Whatever."
Revoking citizenship, once rare, is revving up. Revoking an immigrant's citizenship has proven to be a costly and controversial practice over the years, but the Trump administration says hundreds of people deserve to have their citizenship stripped anyway. The plan calls for ramping up the previously rare denaturalization procedure as part of a broader immigration enforcement agenda, expanding a practice President Donald Trump started in his first term. The Justice Department has moved to revoke the citizenship of nearly 90 people since the start of 2025. By October, the government aims to file at least 250 denaturalization cases in federal court. But under federal law, the government can ask a judge to revoke the citizenship of someone who obtained it through fraud or misrepresentation, such as a false identity or concealing a disqualifying criminal record during the naturalization process. The administration is on pace to pursue more denaturalization cases than any other in recent modern American history. By comparison, the Biden administration brought 24 cases over 4 years, and the Trump administration filed 102 cases in the president's first term. This is a major increase that we haven't seen in decades, said Cassandra Robertson, a professor of law at Case Western University. The Trump administration says it is targeting criminals and fraudsters who should not have become citizens in the first place. It framed the campaign as an effort to preserve the integrity of naturalization. When you commit fraud during the naturalization process, you forfeit the right to keep your U.S. citizenship, said Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen. For decades, the government pursued only a handful of denaturalization cases each year, in part because they require significant resources, are expensive, and can take years to resolve. The cases prosecutors did pursue largely targeted national security threats, affiliates of terror groups, and suspected war criminals. But since Trump returned to office, his administration has moved to expand the use of denaturalization. Within a week of taking office in 2025, Trump ordered adequate resources to be dedicated to denaturalizing some U.S. citizens as part of his broader immigration strategy. Months later, the Department of Justice issued a memo directing the agency's civil division, which primarily handles denaturalization cases, to prioritize and maximally pursue denaturalization processes. They're long and costly and difficult to win. Among the reasons only a handful of cases were pursued over the decades is they can take years to resolve and demand significant resources. It's a cumbersome process. The Trump administration's push comes as the Justice Department grapples with an exodus of government lawyers and a historic caseload stemming from legal challenges at the White House's deportation process. Trump and Republican allies seek to widen the net. Some of the new language calls for focus on people tied to drug cartels and suspects of fraud against private individuals, funds, or corporations. Opponents fear that could open the door to prosecutions targeting the administration's perceived political enemies or specific minority groups, especially given Trump's threats to remove some of his adversaries from the country.
And now we have our page one cover story. Military bases delay the toxic PFAS cleanup. Now they have a big picture where you can see workers kneeling on the edge of a pond. They're kneeling on a rocky soil. They're dressed in their uniforms. They have gloves on. You can see they have water testing equipment in front of them. And it reads, Jacob Carnes and Lily White of the Washington Department of Ecology. They are collecting water samples from a pond near the Army's Yakima Training Center. Wells at more than 140 homes nearby have tested over the Environmental Protection Agency's drinking water limit for PFAS. Forever chemicals remediation are put off for decades in some cases. It's been almost 5 years since Brandy and Brad Hyatt found out that the well at their home, which is next to an Army base in Washington, is contaminated with forever chemicals. They started using bottled water for everything, making coffee and rinsing their toothbrushes. They even carted their 2 small children across town to bathe at a gym so they wouldn't accidentally swallow contaminated bathwater. The Army did install a filter last year, but the well remains contaminated. The kids will be long grown by the time the military provides a permanent fix, which is now delayed until after 2042. Hundreds of military bases have been putting off cleanup of toxic PFAS, or perfluoroalkyl substances, for years, according to a new USA Today analysis of military records. Now, the latest round of delays, which the Pentagon posted in an obscure corner of its website in May, has pushed some deadlines out decades or just even removed them altogether. For decades, the military has extinguished fires using foams containing these toxic PFAS. These chemicals can then seep into the soil and the groundwater, where they persist without breaking down and they increase the chance of certain cancers. The military did not respond to USA Today's request for an estimate of how many people these delays affect, but the tally could easily total tens of thousands of neighbors who are considering how many sites have now been delayed. The delays start piling up in 2025. Nearly 3/4 of these sites, that's over 500 of them, have been delayed at least once, and they're growing significantly longer. USA Today's analysis of now unavailable documents shows that from 21 to 2024, the military delayed cleanup timelines for a few dozen sites each quarter, usually by just a year or two. Timelines at a handful of sites, they would even speed up. Delays, though, suddenly began to pile up in March of 25 when the Pentagon delayed over 150 sites at one time. The newest records released, representing the cleanup timelines as of September 25, delayed the target dates for nearly 200 military sites for as much as 2 decades into the future. Sites with proven contamination. These cleanup delays are happening even at military sites where the Pentagon has publicly confirmed forever chemicals are seeping into the local water. Water testing shows the chemicals can drain off base and then contaminate private wells and sources of municipal drinking water. Dayton, Ohio, Fort Worth, Texas, and Tucson, Arizona are just a sampling of these cities that have filed lawsuit against the military, claiming the PFAS threatens their water sources. USA Today's analysis of available military test results on public and private drinking water shows wells around 73 bases have tested above the current Environmental Protection Agency's limit for forever chemicals in the drinking water, and then all but 2 of these bases have faced delays to their cleanup process. So what does the military say? Dozens of members of Congress have sent letters to the Department of War, which is formerly the Department of Defense, since last fall to express their concern about these delays. In the latest, sent July 21st, Senator Patty Murray, a Democrat from Washington, criticizes not just the delays, but the way they're happening. Instead of consulting with community leaders and then announcing the delays to the public, the department instead chose to just quietly remove the previous cleanup schedule from its website and then just publish new timelines. This is ultimately a violation of trust between military leaders and their surrounding communities. The Pentagon did not respond to USA Today's request for a comment. However, an Army spokesperson said schedule changes are a natural part of this environmental cleanup process. They reflect ongoing technical work, not a change in our commitment. He described protecting drinking water as the first priority at this Yakima training center, adding that base officials maintain regular communication with state and local community. The Army updated its timeline when it became evident that updated PFAS data evolving U.S. EPA standards and site-specific complexity required that the Army to perform additional fieldwork and analysis beyond what earlier published timeline had reflected, Howard wrote. So how the delays affect the community. Near Yakima, Washington, it took the Army nearly 4 years to install the Hyatt's PFAS filtration system. It was the uncertainty during this really long and frightening process that prompted Brandy Hyatt to found Pursue PFAS Free. Now, that's a community group that gathers and shares information and then advocates for clean water around a handful of military bases that are across the state. Everyone deserves to be safe in their home, she said. I didn't feel safe in my home, and my neighbors didn't. Some of her neighbors still aren't safe years after this contamination has been discovered. Now, the Army has created a quarterly newsletter and PFAS website in response to the criticism about poor communication in Yakima. Other sites like Biddle Air National Guard Base in Pennsylvania, they have regular meetings of advisory boards that allows neighbors to meet the military officials leading the cleanup. From day to day, we have no idea what's going on, McGrath told Biddle's restoration manager during the advisory board meeting. I don't see anything on an active level. Hyatt had stronger words for her interactions with the military. The Army, it just gaslights everybody, she said. I love our soldiers, Hyatt said, but I don't have nice things to say about the way the Army has communicated with us. She described tense conversations with Army officials where she feels bullied, and she blamed for the delays holding up the installation of their home filtration. Even when you get the system in, there's still the sense of like, am I safe today, Hyatt says, adding that a neighbor's filter that malfunctioned for months before they discovered the problem. So now Hyatt's group wants the Army to truly provide space for her and her neighbors to sit at their decision-making table. Stop telling us what you're going to do for us and how good it's going to be, and let us be a part of what's happening, Hyatt has said.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:15. Young voters may be key in a Maine race. After the Plattner debacle, the under-35s look for hope. A small block of young voters in the country's oldest state, with a median age of 44.8, could play a pivotal role in one of the most consequential Senate races this year. As Democrats scramble to replace Graham Plattner as their nominee in Maine's Senate race, new polling suggests voters younger than age 35 remain a decisive constituency in the race against Republican Senator Susan Collins. Published on July 21st, a University of New Hampshire survey found Troy Jackson the likely replacement for the Plattner in a statistical dead heat with Collins. Jackson led among women and young voters, garnering 67% support among young voters aged 18 to 34, the same amount Plattner notched in a spring poll against Collins. An analysis by a group of Tufts University this month ranked Maine among the top states where young voters are likely to sway midterm election outcomes. Young people ages 18 to 29 make up a relatively low share of Maine's population. The median age of the state is 44.8, with folks older than 65 comprising 23% of the population. But young people in Maine turn out to vote at rates unheard of across the country. In 2024, 60% of the young people ages 18 to 29 voted in Maine, compared with 47% nationally, according to the 2025 State of Democracy in Maine report. During the 2022 midterms, Maine's youth turnout was more than 10 percentage points higher than the national total. Maine's election laws, including same-day registration and no voter ID requirement, also make it easier for young voters and out-of-state college students to cast a ballot. Justin Chenette, age 35, previously served alongside Jackson as the youngest state senator in Maine's history. He said it's still too early to really see where the chips are falling in the race. Though the presumptive nominee, Jackson can't officially secure a spot on the ticket until a special nominating convention that was set for July 25th. Then he'll have just more than 800 days to build a campaign against the incumbent, who has served in the Senate for nearly 30 years. Jackson's ability to energize and mobilize young voters to head to the polls could prove critical for Democrats. The party sees Maine's Senate race as a must-win to flip control of the chamber. The Jackson campaign is going to have to engage all demographics, but young people can absolutely make or break this race. A tough act to follow. Allison Beye watched students of Colby College galvanize around the Plattner campaign last semester, in ways she hadn't seen them react to a political candidate in years. The Maine U.S. Senate race is not typically a huge topic of conversation at Colby, but it was all that people talked about this spring. They saw something in the primary that spoke to them about what kind of leadership they wanted. Plattner's virtual campus town hall was at capacity. Hundreds of students turned out to listen to him, even ones who didn't plan to vote for him in the primary. She believes Plattner helped cut through their deep disillusionment with the political establishment and offered hope. They would consistently talk about the message he gave about how the system wanted to divide them, and that really resonated for students. Plattner's departure from the race and Jackson's rise as the presumptive nominee have raised fresh questions about whether Democrats will continue to build on the momentum with young people. On paper, Jackson is remarkably similar to Plattner. Both men come from working class backgrounds. Plattner was an oyster farmer, and Jackson is a logger. Both received support from Senator Bernie Sanders, but Jackson still has spent decades in Maine politics and is likely to face scrutiny for past socially conservative viewpoints, including his previously anti-gay marriage and anti-abortion stances. It also remains to be seen whether he holds the same charismatic pull Plattner had over young voters. The policies play a huge part, I think, but we have dismissed the importance of feeling like a candidate makes us feel like you want them to lead. Chenette views Jackson's gruff persona as a potential asset. Young people, he said, are looking for authenticity.
And the second suspect is sought in a Seattle shooting. 3 are killed and 4 are hurt by gunfire at a festival. Authorities were searching for a second suspect who they believe opened fire at a food festival in Seattle, killing 3 people and injuring at least 4. Now, the gunfire erupted Sunday, July the 26th, which is the final night of A Bite of Seattle. That's a food festival at the Seattle Center. That's an outdoor park home to the Space Needle. Now, the shots sent the large crowd of families and vendors into a frenzy as people ran for cover. In total, 7 people were struck by gunfire, said the police. The wounded included a 2-year-old boy. Police believe the incident stemmed from a shootout between at least 2 people near the Seattle Center's indoor food and event hall. One suspect then surrendered to police and another fled. He added that more people could have been involved and urged witnesses to come forward. Police were at the Seattle Center when this gunfire erupted and responded within seconds, Davis said. Despite life-saving efforts, 2 people were pronounced dead at the scene. Several others were taken to hospitals where one woman died from her injuries, the police had said. What do we know about these Seattle shooting victims? Two men, ages 19 and 44, and a 56-year-old woman. They were killed, according to a statement from the Seattle Police Department. The agency did not, though, publicly identify these victims. The 2 men, they died at the scene. The woman, she then died at Harborview Medical Center. That's the region's top-level trauma center, where she and multiple other people have been taken after the shooting. As of Monday, July the 27th, only the toddler now still remains hospitalized at Harborview Medical Center, a spokesperson said. The boy, he was listed in satisfactory condition. A 23-year-old man and a 39-year-old woman were discharged, he said. At UW Medical Center Montlake, medical staff then discharged the 27-year-old man. Police do recover 2 guns after this festival shooting. Davis said authorities recovered 2 firearms right at the scene. He did not describe the weapons, but he added that there was no outstanding threat to the community. Multiple other local, state, and federal agencies, including the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosive, they also responded to the scene. Davis said police have a limited number of witnesses and they urged more to come speak with law enforcement. He also said that there were no surveillance cameras in the area where this shooting broke out.
Biden ends legal bid to keep interview recordings private. Former President Joe Biden has dropped his lawsuit seeking to block the public release of audio recordings from interviews he gave to the ghostwriter of his memoirs, clearing the way for the material to be released to a Republican House committee. Biden's attorney filed a notice of voluntary dismissal days after a divided federal appeals court rejected his requests. The filing ends Biden's legal challenge after the court ruled there is a substantial public interest in the disclosure. The decision follows months of litigation over recordings obtained during special counsel Robert Hur's investigation into Biden's handling of classified documents. Hur declined to bring criminal charges against Biden in 2024, but Republicans later sought access to the interview materials. Biden's legal team had argued the recordings captured private conversations in his home and that releasing them would amount to an unwarranted invasion of his privacy. Instead of pursuing additional appeals, including a possible request to the Supreme Court, Biden chose to dismiss the case. The voluntary dismissal came less than a week after the U.S. Court of Appeals ruled 2-1 against Biden. In the majority opinion, Chief Judge Suri Srinivasan and Judge Gregory Katsas concluded that any privacy concerns did not outweigh the public's interest in releasing the redacted materials. We conclude that any remaining incursion on personal privacy from the disclosure of the now redacted materials likely does not outweigh the public interest in the disclosure, the judges wrote. Judge Florence Pan dissented, writing that Biden had demonstrated a substantial privacy interest because the conversation occurred in his home and were obtained during a criminal investigation that did not result in an indictment. The recordings came from interviews Biden gave to Mark Zwanitzer in 2016 and 17 while working on his memoir, Promise Me Dad. Zwanitzer also collaborated with Biden on his 2007 memoir, Promises to Keep. Federal investigators later obtained recordings during Hur's investigation into Biden's retention of classified documents from his time as a senator and vice president. Although Hur declined to file charges, Republicans in Congress sought the materials after the investigation concluded. Legal battle over the Freedom of Information request. The case began after the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, sought the recordings through the Freedom of Information Act and later sued to obtain their release. In June, U.S. District Court Judge Dabney Friedrich ruled that Biden's privacy interests, while legitimate, were outweighed by the public interest in government transparency. She also found the Justice Department redactions adequately protected sensitive personal information. Biden appealed that ruling, which temporarily blocked the release while the case moved through the courts.
And federal officials probe a video showing an apparent sea lion attack. Federal wildlife authorities are investigating after a video appeared to show a man attacking a protected sea lion at a beach in Southern California. Now, the video appears to show a man who's wearing a t-shirt and shorts approach a sea lion who's resting on the seawall and then kicking the animal, while another person can be heard laughing. The footage then appears to show the person attempting to kick the sea lion again as the animal retreats from its spot. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Fisheries Office is investigating reports of a video on social media that shows an interaction between an individual and a sea lion, and it's allegedly in La Jolla Cove, the agency said. Now, in the video, the individual appears to be kicking the sea lion. This is an ongoing investigation, and we cannot provide further details at this time. Disgusting act of animal cruelty. It's unacceptable. La Jolla Cove, now that's about 13 miles northwest of downtown San Diego. It's a popular destination for its scenic coastal views, and it has protected sea lion populations. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria said he watched the video and he asked local law enforcement to review the footage. This disgusting act of animal cruelty, it's unacceptable, he wrote in his post on X. We must protect our wildlife. In a comment that was posted on Instagram, the San Diego Police Department confirmed federal officials are investigating this incident. We do appreciate the public's concern, and we encourage anyone with relevant information to contact the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. According to the Marine Mammal Commission, California sea lions are protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which was enacted in 1972. NOAA, N-O-A-A, NOAA, says it's illegal to feed, capture, harm, kill, or harass sea lions, and anyone who does that faces potential jail time. Anyone with info about this incident or any other incident involving a mammal being harmed or harassed is asked to contact the NOAA Fisheries Office of Law Enforcement, and their number is 800-853-1964.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio and Reading Service. The time is 12:28. It's on to the money section. Shop tax-free in these states. At least 18 states offer a chance to save money. Hey, we know kids don't want to hear back to school talk. This is a column by Betty Lynn Fisher. But sales tax holidays in some states can help parents and caretakers save money on school supplies. Some states even expand it further and offer tax-free shopping on a variety of items on which shoppers of all ages can save. Saving money is particularly important this year as shoppers continue to say they are stressed about finances and rising costs. In July and August, 18 states have specific sales tax holidays when certain purchases are made for school or tax-free. The first state was Mississippi, and Connecticut is the last state with a tax holiday from August 16th to August 22nd. What are sales tax holidays? Most of the tax-free shopping days give a break on sales tax for items related to school, like clothing, shoes, electronics, and supplies. One state, Massachusetts, extends the sales tax holiday to include more than back-to-school items, but there are some changes from previous years. Ohio is reverting to a 3-day sales tax holiday instead of a 14-day tax holiday that they had in 2025, and included nearly all tangible property costing $500 or less. Virginia's sales tax holiday includes items for hurricane and emergency preparation. New Jersey has permanently repealed its sales tax holiday, and this year Illinois is bringing back a school supply state sales tax holiday for the first time in 10 years. USA Today has compiled a full list of participating states. Back-to-school shopping has already begun. More shoppers have began their back-to-school shopping by early June than in past years, according to the National Retail Federation. About 1/3, or 32% of back-to-school shoppers say they already started browsing and buying by early June, the highest percentage since the first started asking the question in 2018. In 2025, 26% of shoppers says they started shopping in June. According to the annual June survey, all age groups said they had begun the early shopping, but the younger generations were leading the trend. Generation Z at 40% and Millennial at 42% shoppers were the biggest groups to shop early and had the largest jump year over year. In 2025, 31% of the Generation Z and Millennial shoppers were shopping early in June. Only 27% of the Generation X shoppers and 20% of the baby boomers said they had started their back-to-school shopping in June. Consumers may be more prepared to do their back-to-school shopping. The NRF said because 44% said they'd already received their school supply list as of early June. That compares with 38% in 2025. Sales tax holidays help the shoppers' wallets. Data from PwC, professional services firm, shows families expect to spend nearly $922 in the back-to-school season. Nearly half plan to spend more than they did last year. Back-to-school spending is about a commitment, not discretion, said Kelly Penderson. Parents aren't looking for a reason to skip the list. They're looking for ways to absorb a bill they know is coming. That's exactly where tax holidays fit in, Pedersen said. Tax-free weekends are exactly the kind of date a budget-conscious parent has already circled. It's not about spending less. It's about being smart with a commitment that does not go away. Clothing and shoes are the largest line item at $278. Clothing and shoes have historically been the categories that have benefited most during tax holiday windows, and those are precisely the categories families are prioritizing the most. What's different this season is just how deliberately parents are hunting for those windows. 54% of the families in the survey cited sales and promotions as the top purchase factor. 73% are using AI somewhere in their shopping journey, often specifically to compare prices and time purchases. The spending also doesn't stop when school starts. Families are expected to spend another $635 every month after that on fees, meals, and activity costs. Back to school isn't a seasonal event. It's the opening of a year-round financial relationship. The families doing it best are the ones showing up with a plan. But high costs continue to worry shoppers. Prices are still top of the mind, though consumers remain more optimistic than they were 4 years ago when inflation was at its peak. This year, 78% of shoppers expect to see higher prices on back-to-school items compared with 84% in 2022. But there's a difference in how households in different income brackets are viewing prices. Those earning more than $100,000 a year have seen a steeper drop in concern since 2022's higher inflation and continue to drive spending. Lower income households, while less concerned than 4 years ago, remain worried about prices and are looking for ways to stretch their dollars. Retailers are taking note and will have sales promotions all summer. About 1/3 of back-to-school shoppers said they typically plan their shopping around summer sales. Families also told the group for a survey that if back-to-school items are pricier than expected, they will be doing more comparative shopping or checking for items at discount stores. As families prepare for back-to-school season, affordability remains a top priority. Retailers are focusing on delivering value this back-to-school season, offering competitive prices, promotions, and discounts to help families manage the cost of these purchases.
Parents are embracing new baby registry ideas amid the costs. Many are expecting fewer gifts, the survey finds. With a basic crib costing about $200 and some strollers about $500, many families are rethinking how they build baby registries and prepare for their newborn. A new survey from pregnancy and parenting company called What to Expect found that many parents are scaling back their expectations for traditional baby registries, with more just planning to buy expensive essentials by themselves and then turning to alternatives like gift cards, group gifting, and secondhand items. Instead of relying solely on a registry, many parents are now rethinking what support looks like, prioritizing flexible gifts, practical help, and only the items they really truly need. Parents are embracing gift cards and practical support. Rather than filling registries with product loans, many parents are asking just for gift cards, cash funds, and services that can help them after the baby arrives. These options allow loved ones to contribute whatever fits their budget and gives the new parents flexibility to purchase necessities when they need them. Group gifting, now that often helps cover expensive essentials. High ticket things like strollers, travel systems, and nursery furniture, those remain among the biggest expenses. However, registry platforms are now increasingly allowing multiple people to contribute to a single item. More families are choosing experiences over the presents. Some families are replacing traditional baby showers with nesting parties. Now, that's where friends and relatives help prepare meals, organize nursery, or just tackle household tasks that will help before the baby arrives. And finally, secondhand shopping and smaller registries, those gain popularity. To stretch their budgets, 2/3 of moms said they're purchasing more secondhand baby items that they otherwise would because of the high cost. Experts do still recommend buying certain safety-related products like car seats, cribs, and crib mattresses brand new. Parents are also taking a more minimalist approach. The average registry has declined from 58 items, that was in 2024, to 54 items in 2026. 58% of moms said they are intentionally trying to get by with less by focusing on multi-purpose items or just skipping products that they may not even use.
Measure to save Social Security faces a pushback. AARP group hits back at fast track measure. Social Security is facing across-the-board benefit cuts in 6 years, and older Americans want solutions, not opaquely operating committees, the AARP says. A bipartisan group of senators has introduced legislation to fast-track any Social Security saving bills that could shore up the dwindling trust fund that supplements payroll taxes and keeps benefits 100% intact. A bipartisan 7-member Social Security Advisory Board would draft a bill to keep the program's trust fund solvent for at least the next half-century. The Protecting Retirement Opportunities and Maintaining Income Security for Everyone, or PROMISE, P-R-O-M-I-S-E, Act, would then be introduced into the House and Senate by congressional leaders before being considered by committees, which could hold hearings and revise the legislation. Some prominent think tanks, such as the Bipartisan Policy Center and the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, support the move to jumpstart talks to keep Social Security solvent. BPC endorsed the proposed legislation as a serious bipartisan process to break the status quo of inaction. The CRFB said it hoped the proposal jumpstarts a much-needed process to secure Social Security. AARP strongly opposes the bill, however. The nonprofit Nonpartisan Advocate for 125 million ages 50 and up says Congress urgently needs to address Social Security's finances. There's no reason for lawmakers to farm out that work to another body as it would in the PROMISE Act. We strongly adjust to fast-tracking Social Security changes through Congress, said AARP Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer Nancy Lehman. Senator Dick Durbin, the Democratic whip from Illinois, and Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana, they had the letter addressed to them. Durbin and Cassidy are among the lawmakers who introduced the PROMISE Act proposal. The PROMISE Act would create an independent bipartisan Social Security Advisory Board, also called an SSAB, a lot of acronyms here, right, to develop and send a base bill to Congress that would ensure the Social Security trust funds have enough money for at least 50 years. Majority leaders of the Senate and the House, or if not, any member of Congress could introduce the base bill, which would then be referred to the Senate Finance Committee and House Ways and Means Committee for a chance to hold hearings on it and amend it. The committees would vote or report on the base bill. If they don't, the bill would automatically be placed on Senate and House calendars. Majority leaders of the Senate and House could move the bill forward, as could any other member of Congress. Similarly, anyone in Congress could offer amendments after the motion to proceed. Finally, the Senate and the House would vote on the bill after 100 hours of consideration. Final passage would require a 3/5 vote in the Senate and a majority vote in the House. Our bipartisan proposal opens Congress to debate this issue in a transparent, fair, and bipartisan way, Durbin said in a release. We were elected to solve problems, and there's no greater problem than the solvency and future of Social Security. So why does AARP oppose the bill? Though Durbin touts transparency, AARP says the bill offers the opposite. It said the Promise Act limits debate and amendments, and that could allow lawmakers to cut Social Security payments. Strengthening Social Security should happen through regular order in full public view with openness and transparency, rather than through a process that limits the type of amendments and sets arbitrary procedural deadlines to short-circuit the debate, said Nancy Lehman, AARP's Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer. The bill calls for the advisory board's proposal to be introduced in Congress by September 17th, or the first day after that, when the House and Senate are in session, she said. Lawmakers could then hold hearings and amend the SSAB plan, but would not need to vote to advance the measure out of key congressional committees, as is typical for federal legislation. Instead, if lawmakers don't vote by November 9th, the bill would move straight to the House and Senate floors during a post-election lame duck session of Congress when departing members are completely unaccountable to voters, Lehman said. Among her other objections to the bill, she argues that it caps the time to consider, amend, and debate the bill at 100 hours and includes language that limits the type of amendments allowed. If ever the other bill in Congress goes through regular order, why something as important as Social Security gets a special process that cuts off debate and limits the type of amendments and limits the kind of things you can talk about, said Bill Swinney, AARP Senior Vice President for Government Affairs. To us, that just doesn't make sense. AARP opposes other bills that create Social Security commissions. AARP said it opposes two other bills that would create commissions to address Social Security's long-term bill solvency. One House bill, sponsored by Representatives Tom Cole of Republican of Oklahoma and Tom Suozzi of Democrat of New York, creates a 13-member commission tasked with providing recommendations and legislation to Congress on how to shore up Social Security's finances. That bill would allow a proposed plan to move forward on an expedited up or down vote. Individual members of Congress would not be able to offer amendments, AARP said. Another proposal would create a fiscal commission to reduce the national debt and annual deficits and shore up trust funds dedicated not just for Social Security, but also for Medicare and the nation's highways. But Social Security is a self-finance system that does not contribute a penny to the national debt, and Congress should not put it in the crosshairs of unrelated budget debates, Limon said. Instead, any changes to Social Security should focus on the financial and retirement security of the American people. What should Congress do instead? Social Security provides retirement benefits to 71 million Americans to give them some financial security. It's a promise that after a lifetime of hard work, you'll receive the money you have earned, Lehman said. Keeping that promise is one of Congress's most solemn responsibilities. If regular order is the gold standard for routine legislative matters, it certainly should be the standard for something as important as Social Security, Lehman said, noting that the last time Social Security approached trust fund depletion in the early 1980s, there were no shortcuts.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and our time is 12:43. Now we have USA Today's Human Resource column, written by our expert, Johnny C. Taylor. Here's our first question. I'm feeling burned out, and I know I need some time off, but my workplace being constantly available seems to be valued. So I worry that taking my PTO could hurt how I'm perceived, especially with advancement opportunities in play. So how do I decide if it's worth it to take some time off? This question comes from Rylan. Now here's Johnny's answer to Rylan. In most cases, the answer, it's yes. Take the paid time off that you have earned. It's part of sustaining strong performance. It's not a sign you're less committed. The key is using it intentionally and responsibly. At the SHRM, we're seeing unprecedented levels of employee burnout, particularly among younger workers and managers. Now, that's concerning because burnout just doesn't affect individuals. It reduces engagement, innovation, decision making, and ultimately business performance. Smart employers recognize that that rest and recovery aren't rewards for working hard. They're investments in sustaining high performance. So that's why I talk about work/life integration rather than work/life balance. The goal, it isn't a perfect 50-50 split. Real life doesn't work that way, of course. The goal is finding a sustainable rhythm where work and personal responsibilities can coexist without one consistently overwhelming the other. Now, that might mean stepping away for a doctor's appointment or making up the time later, or leaving early for your child's recital and finishing a project after. Building that flexibility into your routine before burnout sets in, that makes you better equipped to handle the inevitable demands of both work and life. Now, that said, taking PTO also comes with responsibilities. Your team carries your workload while you're away, so plan your time off as thoughtfully as you can. When possible, avoid scheduling extended absences during critical business periods. Communicate early, make sure your work is covered, and leave your colleagues with clear information about what they may need while you're gone. When you prepare well, your absence, it should not create unnecessary stress for everybody else. If your organization genuinely discourages employees from using earned PTO despite saying that it values well-being, well, pay attention to that. A culture that expects people to perform at their best, but then discouraging the recovery that makes high performance possible, that isn't sustainable. It's worth asking whether that's an environment where you can continue to grow and build a long-term career. Now, my best advice to you is this. Use your PTO the way high performers use it every other resource. Intentionally. Plan, communicate, and leave your team set up for success. The best leaders I know, they never apologize for taking time off. They prepare so well that the work just continues without disruption. That kind of planning doesn't hurt your chances for any advancement. If anything, it demonstrates that judgment, professionalism, and leadership organizations value that the most.
Millions of eggs recalled due to salmonella risk. Midwest Poultry Services issued the action on July 22nd. Nearly 1.6 million dozen white shell and brown shell eggs have been recalled due to potential salmonella contamination. Midwest Poultry Services, LP, issued a recall on July 22nd for nearly 1.6 million dozen white and brown cage-free eggs from Texas due to the potential salmonella enteritis contamination, according to a Food and Drug Administration recall report. As of July 22nd, Midwest Poultry Services was not aware of any illnesses related to the eggs. The company identified the issue through proactive environmental monitoring practices and root cause analysis, according to the recall report. The company was not distributing fresh eggs from its Texas farms as of July 22nd. And here's what to know about the egg recall. What eggs are recalled? The recalled white and brown cage-free eggs have an identified code printed on the left or right sides of the carton in date-coding ink. Only the codes P-1950 or 0840962 with a Jillian date between 157 and 184 are recalled, according to the report. Where were the eggs sold? Recalled eggs were sold in Kroger stores in Texas and Louisiana, Brookshire grocery stores in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Mississippi, and at other small retail outlets, according to the recall report. The eggs were also shipped to food service and retailers in Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. What to do if you own the recalled eggs? Consumers are urged to avoid consumption of the eggs and return the products in the original place of purchase for a full refund. Consumers with questions should contact Midwest Poultry Services at 574-405-9531. That's 574-405-9531. Symptoms of salmonella poisoning. Symptoms of salmonella poisoning usually start 6 hours to 6 days after ingesting the bacteria. The most common symptoms are diarrhea, fever, and stomach cramps. While most healthy people can recover in 4 to 7 days without treatment, some vulnerable groups, including children younger than 5, adults 65 and older, and those with weakened immune systems, may experience more severe illness that requires medical treatment or hospitalization. If you display any of these more serious symptoms, the CDC advises contacting your healthcare professional. Most symptoms are diarrhea and a fever higher than 102, diarrhea for more than 3 days if not improving, bloody diarrhea, so much vomiting that you cannot keep liquids down, and signs of dehydration such as not urinating much, a dry mouth and throat, and feeling dizzy when standing up.
Now, the Trump $1 gold-colored coin, it generates a buzz. This new $1 coin featuring President Donald Trump's likeness will be available this fall. Now, this gold-colored commemorative coin has generated plenty of buzz. But is it actually worth buying like an investment? Unlike traditional gold bullion coins, this Trump $1 coin contains no precious metal. Now, that means any value beyond its $1 face value will depend largely on collector demand, scarcity, and market interest, not the price of the gold. While commemorative coins can appreciate over time, their returns tend to be less predictable than those of bullion coins, which derive much of their value from precious metals that they do contain. So, does the Trump coin have a place in your portfolio? Here's what to know about this new release and how it compares with traditional gold investment coins. First, what we know about the new $1 Trump coin. The U.S. Treasury Department announced that production of the new Trump $1 coin began at the Philadelphia Mint in July, with a public release expected this fall. Although the coin has a gold-colored finish, it is made of non-precious metal, and it carries a legal tender face value of $1. Could the $1 Trump coin become valuable? Well, the short answer is possibly, but there's no guarantee. Unlike gold bullion coins, the Trump coin contains no precious metal. Any value above its $1 face value, that will depend on factors such as collector demand, the number of coins produced, and how many people choose to keep them rather than spend them. It could retain a small collector premium depending on the number of coins produced, demand, hoarding behavior by the public, and how quickly the mint fulfills its orders, says Philip Deal, who's the former U.S. Mint director and president of the U.S. Money Reserve. Now, he adds that coins with minting errors could also command higher prices among the collectors. But still, experts caution against buying commemorative coins with the expectation of strong investment returns. Commemorative coins can sometimes outperform bullion, but that is the exception, not something a buyer should assume, he said. So, what are gold investment coins? Gold investment coins, now they're also known as bullion coins, they are produced by the government mints and struck from precious metals that meet strict purity standards. Now, unlike circulating currency, bullion coins are purchased primarily as an investment, and their value is tied to the market price of the gold they contain. Like the new Trump $1 coin, U.S. gold bullion coins are legal tender and they carry an official face value. However, that face value has little practical significance because the gold they contain is worth far more. So, for example, the 1-ounce American Gold Eagle, it has a face value of $50, but the current price of gold determines its market value. Today, a 1-ounce gold American Eagle sells for about 4,200 times the face value of a Trump $1 coin, Deal had said. And last, should you buy the Trump coin or the gold bullion coins? The right choice, it depends on why you're buying. If you're a collector or Trump supporter looking for a piece of political memorabilia, the commemorative $1 Trump coin, it may be worth considering. Just keep in mind that any value beyond the $1 face value is not guaranteed. Anything else, Alan?
Yeah, we can talk about a missing hiker in Grand Canyon. An 83-year-old man who vanished while hiking near the north rim of the Grand Canyon National Park was rescued after an overnight search that involved helicopters, drones, search dogs, and dozens of rescuers. Gerald Gwynn of Kanab, Utah, was found July 22nd after spending about a day and a half in rugged terrain. National Park Service officials said Gwynn was located during a helicopter reconnaissance flight about 2.5 miles from where he was last seen and was carried to a nearby roadway for medical evaluation. Despite spending the night outdoors, Gwynn was described as in good spirits, and he was evaluated by emergency medical personnel before being released, according to National Park Service and the Kane County Sheriff's Office. Multiple agencies assisted in the rescue, including Grand Canyon National Park, Kane County Search and Rescue, and the Coconino County Search and Rescue. According to the Kane County Sheriff's Office, Gwynn and another person began what was intended to be a short hike around 12:30 p.m. on July 21st in a remote area along the border of Grand Canyon National Park and the Kaibab National Forest. The pair intentionally separated while searching for a nearby historic object. Although the other hiker found the site, Gwynn never returned. After searching for several hours without success, the companion called for help. Kane County Search and Rescue launched an overnight search, deploying ground crews, drones equipped with forward-looking infrared technology, and search dogs, but Gwynn was not found. The cell phone ping helped guide rescuers. The National Park Service assumed command of the search July 22nd, adding helicopter and ground search teams. Kane County rescuers later rejoined the effort. Officials said a cell phone ping narrowed Gwynn's general location, shifting search efforts farther east. A National Park Service helicopter eventually spotted Gwynn, who was able to wave to the crew from below. The helicopter could not land because of the steep terrain, prompting a Kane search and rescue team to hike about 1.5 miles to reach him. Rescuers found Gwynn cold and unable to walk, but otherwise alert. They provided warm clothing and fluids while preparing for an aerial evacuation. As darkness approached, officials determined a helicopter short haul could not be completed safely. Instead, a paramedic was lowered to the scene, and about 20 rescuers carried Gwynn to safety, clearing fallen logs and marking hazards along the way. The operation concluded about 1:30 a.m. on July 23rd after reaching the roadway. Gwynn was evaluated by Kane County Emergency Medical Services, cleared, and released.
And you're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for Tuesday, July the 28th of 2026 on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return to you for more readings just after this short break now. Your readers again today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Jody.
and Alan Blackburn, and it's on to the sports section. The biggest lie of the name, image, and likeness, or also called NIL era, isn't what you think. This is a column by Matt Hayes. Let me explain the great fallacy of the name, image, and likeness NIL era, a 5-year college sports circus so unhinged and unbridled, the NCAA and Congress can't figure it out, or they don't want to. Because the answer has always been as simple as collectively bargaining with players. A player union, strictly bargain rules, and consequences for those who break the rules. Now the fallacy. Players don't want to be employees and collectively bargain. That may be the biggest load of stuff I've ever heard in 5 years of the NIL era, lies and deceit. College sports leaders and even some within Congress continue to push this ridiculous charade. Continue to say players keep telling them they don't want to be employees, don't want the on and off field protections that come with collectively bargaining. They just want to be individual contractors, negotiate directly with their schools, and be swindled by agents and middlemen, whatever the crooks who take 30% of their earnings are calling themselves these days. I mean, what player in his right mind wouldn't want to collectively bargain and have access to 49% of media rights revenue? Some quick math. The 4 power conferences reported earnings of nearly $4 billion, and those numbers will grow exponentially over the next decade. If college sports leaders were generally honest about it all, they'd admit that it's really just the top 1% of players who don't want to collectively bargain. Why would they? They have free movement, and many make more than the end of roster players in the NFL. The setup is perfect for them, but for the vast majority of the 14,500 football players in the Football Bowl subdivision, not for thousands of players pushed into the portal by aforementioned agents, only to find it's not what they were sold. I'm sure college sports leaders have spoken to them, and they love the current setup that leaves them vulnerable within a broken system, and to coaches trying to find the next bidder while trying to save their own hides and protect their own millions. If you're looking for answers to all the problems the brilliant minds of Congress are currently debating, it's right in front of you with collective bargaining. Stanford football players formed the first player-led chapter of the College Football Players Association. The organization announced July 27th. It's the first step toward potentially unionizing college athletes and developing a collective bargaining agreement. Age limitations, player movement, elimination of judicial overreach, no rules, no enforcement, all of it goes away with collective bargaining. But so does the hoarding of cash. And now you're starting to see what this is all about, what it's always about, money. College sport leaders don't want to fork over 49%. The current number of NFL players receive from NFL franchises in CBA negotiations of annual revenue. It has nothing to do with players, their desire to avoid employment. Free player movement, blown salary caps, and circumventing the salary cap with private NIL all ends when collective bargaining begins. The free-for-all of roster turnover and player management ceases to be a problem. All the issues that currently plague college sports that Congress has spent years trying to fix and won't. The Protect College Sports Act has zero chance of getting through Congress. That will go away when university and players collectively bargain. The same way they collectively bargained, in a sense, to reach the original groundbreaking revenue share deal from the House case. That deal took a lawsuit and a judge, and the universities fighting it for every single inch of ground. But it happened. It wasn't the end of college sports as we know it, and it hasn't pushed anyone or anything to the edge of a financial cliff, despite the nattering nabobs of negativism constantly declaring the end is near, yet somehow managing to field teams every single year. Because there's always more money in the game. How the regular season and postseason are formatted can be debated and collectively bargained a hell of a lot easier than SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey and the Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti playing footsie for 2 years. Live sports is everything for network television and streaming sites. They can't get enough of it because it's the only thing that sells. Nothing sells quite like football, the NFL and college football. The only thing that's real and undeniable in this current mosh pit of 5-year NIL era run.
And the 2026 Fame class, it brings back the game's old values. It was an old school reminder to the way baseball used to be played, the way we looked at the game and the stats that shaped our opinions at the Baseball Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Now, the new Hall of Fame trio of Jeff Kent, Carlos Beltran, and Andrew Jones, we're here to remind everyone that the traditional statistics should still matter. Runs batted in should not be considered a fluke stat in a box score. There really is a clutch element in a player's psyche, and while everyone is engrossed with the on-base percentage these days, even if some sluggers are only clogging the bases by drawing a rash of walks, future Hall of Fame manager Dusty Baker has a question for you. If driving in runs or scoring runs isn't important, then why bother keep score? Kent, Beltran, and Jones inducted on July 26 with a record 60 Hall of Famers and 12,000 fans in attendance, certainly represented baseball's greatest values throughout their careers. They didn't celebrate drawing a walk with a runner on a third base and less than 2 outs, instead wanting to drive them in, not letting the responsibility fall to someone else. They didn't sit out games when they were not feeling well or treat the injured list like a paid vacation. They posted season after season, oftentimes playing in pain, knowing they were a whole lot more valuable at 70% than just sitting on the bench. They didn't try to create a brand or try to draw attention to themselves. They played to win game after game, season after season. Check out the resume. Kent, who hit the most home runs by a second baseman in history, hit at least 20 homers and drove in 100 or more runs in 6 consecutive seasons and 8 times in his career. Jones, he played more than 150 games in 11 seasons with Atlanta, including 4 more than 160 games. And Beltran, a 9-time All-Star, had 8 seasons of at least 100 RBIs and 7 scoring 100 or more runs.
Overlooked champions? Reasons to take the Seahawks repeat bid seriously. The Seattle Seahawks shouldn't have to squeeze back into the spotlight. That space typically we reserve for the defending Super Bowl champion throughout the offseason. In Seattle's case, however, gazes began to stray not long after Mike Macdonald and company got their hands on the Lombardi Trophy. The Seahawks were, without question, compelling victors. Their systematic dismantling of the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 60 was a fitting capstone to a campaign that eradicated all doubt as to who was the NFL's strongest outfit by season's end. But it wasn't long before a group known for its lack of braggadocio and perhaps star power became somewhat of an afterthought. As the organization's veterans reported for training camp in July 24th, the Seahawks began preparation for their title defense with a diminished level of buzz. Despite the 2025 season's accomplishments, Seattle doesn't stoke comparable off-season intrigue like to the Los Angeles Rams, who might have secured their place as the focal point of the NFC West, and perhaps the league at large, with their acquisition of Myles Garrett. And as the Patriots also began work the same day in preparation for the season-opening Super Bowl rematch, New England clearly is on track to command more attention after the addition of A.J. Brown. It turns out a championship, record sale price, and spot on Hard Knocks only buys the public's focus for so long. Yet that dynamic likely matters little to the Seahawks, who can fall back on McDonald's now famous post-NFC championship refrain, "We did not care." With no rallying cries for a repeat bid or other inflammatory boasting accompanying the start of the new season, Seattle seems as though it's somehow flying under the radar. While the field will always have a more favorable outlook than any other team, even a potential front runner, here are some reasons for the Seahawks' repeat chance that shouldn't be overlooked. Continuity is key. At this time last year, McDonald was implementing one of the league's more drastic overhauls for an incumbent coach, reconfiguring his offense to better adhere to his overall vision for the team. By comparison, the season change for Seattle is relatively minimal. That might seem like an oversimplification for an organization that lost its ace play caller, Clint Kubiak, Super Bowl 60 MVP Kenneth Walker, and other meaningful pieces. Yet with the overwhelming majority of their core coming back, the Seahawks could enjoy a level of continuity not seen by other recent title winners. Other than Walker, every offensive starter from Super Bowl 60 is back. While new coordinator Brian Fleury is substituting his own system, the former San Francisco 49ers run game coordinator knows he has a basis to work with in what Kubiak already built. Number 2, the run game is a concern, but there's a clear lane ahead. Though it was an expected loss, Walker's departure in free agency is a difficult blow to the run game that finally found its footing down the stretch. In the final 3 games before the playoffs, Seattle racked up 514 yards on the ground, and then with Zach Charbonnet succumbing to a torn anterior ligament in the divisional round win over the 49ers, Walker stepped up by running for 313 yards and 4 scores in 3 postseason games. With Walker off to the Kansas City Chiefs and Charbonnet opening up camp on the physically unable to perform list, the backfield is unquestionably the greatest source of uncertainty for Seattle. It's worth noting, however, that the run game remained a problem for the majority of the season before the late season swell. Through the first 15 weeks of the season, Seattle ranked 22nd in the NFL, but the Seahawks still managed to go 12-3 to that point. Their attack fueled primarily by Darnold and Offensive Player of the Year Jackson Smith-Njigba. In selecting Notre Dame's Jadarian Price with number 32 overall pick, General Manager John Schneider made a clear statement about where he wants the ground game to go from here. Price can hardly be considered an every-down grinder after never logging more than 15 carries in a game while operating alongside number 3 overall pick Jeremiah Love for the Fighting Irish. But he had a knack for breaking away from opponents, both as a runner and returner, and should be able to keep the chunk gains coming after Walker tied for 3rd in the NFL with 10 carries of 20-plus yards last season. Number 3, Rashid Shaheed hasn't been fully unlocked. A mid-season trade for speedy receiver and made plenty of sense for a team intent on taxing its opponents. The Seahawks acquired Shaheed with the intent of unlocking him as the big play dynamo he previously was under Kubiak, for whom the pass catcher averaged 17.5 yards per catch in 2024 on the New Orleans Saints. In a half season in Seattle, however, Shaheed posted just 15 catches in 9 regular season games as he struggled to reaffirm his place as one of the league's premier deep threats. Yet there's no buyer's remorse for Schneider, who re-signed Shaheed to a 3-year, $51 million contract at the outset of free agency. That money made clear that the Seahawks see the Pro Bowl kick returner as a critical staple of their offense. Though Smith-Njigba is sure to remain the focal point of the aerial attack, Shaheed's contribution should prove vital. Not only does his mere presence open up the field for Darnold, but the occasional vertical shot can also reduce reliance on having an efficient and methodical run game. Also aiding in the effort, second-year receiver Torrey Horton, who scored 5 touchdowns as a rookie. The Dart side defense should have a strong sequel lineup. Defenses are typically ripe for regression. And after Seattle finished last season the league's stingiest unit in points allowed, and the number 8 since 1978 in DVOA, defense adjusted value over average, it's difficult to say with any sense of certainty that the group can clear the sky-high bar set in 2025, but things are still looking mighty bright for the dark side. The NFL can be a weak link system, and Seattle might have the fewest vulnerabilities. Even the foremost contenders can be undone by one glaring problem area. Think back to Patrick Mahomes picking on then Buffalo's cornerback Khalil Elam in 2024 AFC Championship, while the Seahawks overwhelming the left side of Patriots' offensive line in Super Bowl 60. For all of its top-tier talent, Seattle's strong suit might be its lack of an obvious area to attack. The most obvious candidate for opponents to zero in on might be Anthony Bradford. The right guard's struggles become more pronounced in the 3 close matchups for the Rams when he surrendered a 13% pressure rate and 16 of his 41 pressures on the season. Preventing him from derailing those critical NFC West tilts might get even more difficult this fall, especially if Aaron Darnold hops out of retirement to join his former team. But that shortcoming didn't prove too troublesome on the season, as Seattle surrendered just 27 sacks while still featuring an aggressive aerial attack.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 1:15. We're going to continue with sports. We're going to talk the PGA Tour, the 3M Open. Action Jackson wins in the third start. Jackson Koivan always has been precocious. In second grade, he already mastered addition and subtraction, so his teacher just jumped him up to division and multiplication. Now, Fred Garcia, his golf coach, remembers their first lesson when Koivan was 12. He had a medium bucket of balls in about 5 minutes, just riffling through them, he said. When he got done, I said, "You've got to learn how to practice. You've got to have a routine." His routine became winning. Champ is the nickname that Garcia, teaching pro at the Cinnabar Hills in San Jose, bestowed on this prize pupil. And on July the 26th, this 21-year-old prodigy became a champ for the first time on the PGA Tour, winning the 3M Open in Blaine, Minnesota, and just his third PGA Tour start as a professional and 13th career start overall. Koivan closed in 5 under 66 at the TPC Twin Cities to set a 72-hole tournament scoring record of 25 under 259 and 3 strokes better than world number 1, who's Scotty Scheffler. Koivan made his move on Saturday, playing the final 10 holes in 9 under to shoot a tournament record back 9 score of 28, card 61, and then tied the 3M Open 54-hole scoring record. He built a 3-stroke lead and 6 ahead of Scheffler, but he knew there were birdies to be had and that someone likely would go low in the final round. Michael Kim shot a 59 on Friday, but then ran out of gas on the weekend. In the final round, Koivan birdied the first hole and 3 of his first 6 to stretch his lead to as many as 6. But Scheffler refused to make it a cakewalk for him, throwing a final round 63 to finish up 22 under and record his 5th runner-up of the season. The world number 1 has gone 182 days since his last win. Past major champs Hideki Matsuyama, who did 64, and then Brian Harman, 65. They tied for third at 20 under, along with Chandler Phillips and Denny McCarthy. "I did what I could do today," Scheffler said. "My back 9 Friday and front 9 Saturday, that cost me, but I put up a good fight." Koivan played the final 42 holes of the tournament bogey-free, tacking on a birdie at the par 5 12th and the drove short par 4th 16th to set up a 6-foot birdie. He pumped his right fist when he holed a 14-foot par putt at the last, and then he hugged his dad. He was the number 1 ranked player in the World Amateur Golf Rankings when he accepted PGA Tour membership via the PGA Tour University Accelerated. He missed the cut at the John Deere Classic last month in his professional debut, but he finished tied for 10th at the ISCO Championship in this most recent start. Now, Scheffler, for one, was impressed with how he handled himself, sleeping on a lead and never letting anyone cut into it. "I think that shows not only how talented of a player he is, but I think the mental strength he has as well," he said. Now, as a measure of his mental fortitude, CBS Sports' Amanda Bellenwas asked Koivan to show the TV audience his glove, where he had written the words confidence, trust, and dominate. Dominate's a word I came up with in college because I just want to see how good I can play, he says. And now, just 35 days after playing his final round as an amateur, Koivan's dream of winning on the PGA Tour is complete in a flash. That's always been his M.O. The bigger the spotlight, the more he shines, Garcia said. Champ is now officially a champ.
Jerry Kelly wins the ISPS Handa Senior Open in another golf story. Jerry Kelly is a PGA Tour Champions Major winner again. Kelly got up and down for a birdie from a greenside bunker on the par 5 18th hole to clinch a final round 2 under 68 to win the 2026 ISPS Handa Senior Open at historic Glen Eagles in Scotland. Kelly now has 14 PGA Tour Championship wins, and he can put the Senior Open trophy on the mantle next to his 2 senior players' titles, the second of which was won under the name Colleagues Company Championship. It is indescribable to win it. The Senior Claret Jug is the trophy that I've wanted as an over 50 golfer other than any other, the 59-year-old said on July 26th. To do it in Scotland at the home of golf and actually win and get into the home of golf in St. Andrews, I mean, I'm absolutely speechless. It's been this Scotland army out here that's been behind me, and that really brought me through. I really appreciate the people for getting behind me and just lifting me up when things were going low, saying you've got this and really pulling me through. I really appreciate Scotland itself. Cameron Percy had a 6-footer for a birdie that could have put some pressure on Kelly, but he missed left. Kelly then made his 4-foot birdie to finish as the only golfer at double digits under par. Percy tied Matt Gogol, who shot a final round 63, and South Africa's Darren Vichart for a second at 8 under. Scotland's Stephen Gallagher was solo 5th at 6 under, and he shot a final round 62, but came up short in his bid to win on home soil. But this was Kelly's year, and he is now the 10th American to win the Senior Open. My brain actually was the most successful part of my game, said Kelly. In the past, I would have gotten down, and I wasn't striking the way I liked to strike it. But instead of worrying about that, I just went and took care of the next shot. I learned a lot about myself today, and I wish I could have learned it about 20 or 30 years ago. You're never too old to learn, and that's really what pulled me through. Kelly is the second oldest Open winner since Bernard Langer at age 61 won it in 2019. And this is the 16th of 28 PGA Tour Champions events, and the last of the fine senior majors this season. There are now 9 events before the 3-tournament postseason, the Charles Schwab Cup.
And now we're going to talk the U.S. Track and Field Championships, the winners and the losers. Familiar names, new ones alike, impress us. Champs were crowned at the 2026 USA Track and Field National Championships. The U.S. Track and Field Championships were held in New York City for the first time since 1991 at Icon Stadium on Randall's Island. Here's USA Today's sports analysis of the winners and the losers from this competition. First in the winners, they have Melissa Jefferson Wooden, wins big in the 200. The fastest woman in the country title still belongs to Jefferson Wooden, even though she decided not to run the 100. July 26 was just another day in the office for her as she easily won the women's 200, crossing the finish line with a season best time of 21.69. Then in winners, Sha'Carri Richardson, victorious in 100. Richardson's chief competitor, Melissa Jefferson Wooden, didn't compete in the 100, but Richardson still deserves credit for crossing the finish line in first as the heavy favorite. She's the second woman to win 3 U.S. 100-meter titles since 2000. And then Noah Lyles wins 100, sustains a minor injury in the 200. Lyles typically shines when the lights are the brightest. Lyles ran a blistering and world-leading 9.79 to win his 3rd national title in the men's 100. The confident Lyles delivered a message to his fellow competitors after being crowned the fastest man in America once again. Winner still, teenager Cooper Lutkenhaus steals the show in the men's 800. This 17-year-old prodigy ran away from the other distance runners in the men's 800. He was in 3rd at the start of the second and final lap, but separated from the runners with roughly 200 meters to go, posting a gold medal winning time of 1.43.48. It was his first national title. Christopher Robinson wins gold in the 400 hurdles. A new national champion was crowned in the 400 hurdles. Robinson ran a clean race and eventually separated himself from the other competitors down the backstretch to win the men's 400 hurdles with a season best time of 47.61. Now Chase Jackson dominates the women's shot put. Jackson won the women's shot put competition after her first throw of 67 feet 2 3/4 inches. But the women's shot put American record holder, she saved her best for last when she tossed 67 feet 5 1/4 inches on her final. Nikki Hiltz wins 4th consecutive title in the women's 1500. Hiltz was in second down in the home stretch, but dug deep as she fought hard and raced to the finish line. She narrowly edged Addie Wiley and Emily McKay to win her 4th national title in a row. Then the best for last. The 4-day U.S. Championship saved its best race for last as the men's 110 hurdles was decided in a photo finish. Cordell Tinch was slow out of the blocks and had to work hard to catch Bradley Franklin. Tinch built up enough momentum to catch him at the final hurdle, and then he made an impressive lean at the line to just barely edge Franklin. The two sprinters had to anxiously wait for a few moments until the photo finish confirmed that Tinch was victorious at 12.993 over Franklin's 13, which is 12.997. Track and field fans. Hayward Field at the University of Oregon hosted the U.S. Track and Field Championships for the 14th time last year. It was refreshing to see the biggest track and field competition in the U.S. held at another location. The fact that the track meet was held in the largest media market in the country should also help with this sports exposure. All right, now we're on to the losers. Justin Robinson disqualified after winning the men's 400. Robinson pulled off a huge upset by winning the 400, running a 4.31. Robinson, though, was later disqualified for a lane violation. So Chris Bailey, who originally came in second with a time of 4.39, he was the winner. Quincy Hall unable to get out of first round. Hall shocked the track and field world with a come-from-behind win in the men's 400 back at the 24 Paris Olympics. He hasn't had the same success. He didn't qualify past the first round in the men's 400. Still on losers, Christian Coleman just misses the men's 100 podium. Coleman was one of the favorites to win a medal in the men's 100. He had a pretty solid start running out of the lane 4 in the final, but crossed the finish line 4th, missed out on the bronze medal. Still on losers, women's long jump competition. Tara Davis Woodhull lost her first long jump competition in nearly 3 years in a dramatic fashion. She leaped 23 feet 6 inches on her final jump to claim first place over Alyssa Jones, who had jumped 22 feet 10. But upon review, it was determined that the reigning Olympic and world champ long jumper had fouled on her final jump, and the gold medal was awarded to Jones. And last on losers, the rest of the women's discus, women's high jump fields. The women's discus had a predictable outcome because of Valerie Sion has dominated the event for nearly a decade. She threw 228 feet 2 inches on her 4th attempt to win her 8th national title in the discus. This 2-time Olympic gold medalist won by just over 7 feet. Now Sierra Jackson, the 25 NCAA women's discus champ, she came in second with a throw of 221 feet 1 inch. The same can be said for the women's high jump. Vashti Cunningham cleared the bar at 6 feet 3.5 inches to win her 8th national championship event. The women's discus and women's high jump at nationals has become a battle for second place until further notice.
Pogacar's Tour Dynasty reaches vintage 5th title. Slovenia's Tadej Pogacar secured a record-equaling 5th Tour de France title after safely navigating the final stage, which was won by Mathieu van der Poel, to seal a 3rd consecutive crown in cycling's greatest race. The 27-year-old UAE Team Emirates XRG cyclist, affectionately known as Pogi, only needed to avoid a race-ending mishap on the run into Paris on July 26th to join Jacques Anquetil, Eddie Merckx, Bernhard Hinault, and Miguel Indurain as 5-time Tour champion. Belgium's Remco Evenepoel finished second overall, while Mexico's Isaac Del Toro rounded out the overall podium in 3rd. Thank you to all the fans and to all of France for hosting this great race, Pogacar said. And thank you to my competitors for putting on a great show. We fought hard over the last 3 weeks. Van der Poel and Pogacar broke away on the final ascent of Montmartre with around 10 kilometers remaining and took a slender advantage into the run into the Champs-Élysées as the chasing group closed relentlessly. Pogacar's challenge faded inside the final kilometer, but Van der Poel pressed on to secure victory in a photo finish, ahead of Alpecin Premier Tech teammate Jasper Philipsen, with Mads Pedersen of Lidl Trek in 3rd. When I was sick last year and I had to watch the stage on television, I was always thinking about this moment, said Van der Poel, who's 31 years old. The way it went, it's a dream. It's incredible. It's super hard to be up there with the best rider in the world, and all my respects for Tadej. Well, I thought we were going to get caught back. I was thinking about this moment. I put my head down the last 500 meters, just went as hard as I could. I'm super happy. I have a few races I still wanted to win in my career, and this was one of them. Pogacar underlined his supremacy throughout the Tour by claiming 5 stage victories. His path to a 3rd straight yellow jersey became less complicated when 2-time winner Jonas Vingegaard, widely regarded as his principal challenger, withdrew after a crash on stage 15. The Tour's traditional finale in Paris was shortened after security forces were redeployed to help tackle wildfires near Bordeaux. As a result, stage 21, which customarily takes the peloton into Paris, before several laps of the Champs-Élysées, was reduced to 89 kilometers from the original 133. This year's race also produced a remarkable first. No rider from France, Italy, or Spain won the stage, making it the first Tour de France without a stage victory from any of the three nations that created and host cycling's Grand Tours. Pogacar's last triumph caps 3 weeks for racing since the Grand Deport in Barcelona and further cements his status as the dominant rider of his generation.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our time now is 1:30, and it's time to go to Lifestyles. I'm going to start you out with a streaming article. Framed woman tells her side of a toxic story. Now, I give you this warning. This story does contain spoilers from Netflix's new documentary that's called A Toxic Love Story, and it is streaming right now. When Michelle Hadley served 88 days in prison for a crime she did not commit, she kept her sanity by making calendars and welcome packs for other inmates, resources she says she wished she had had. Hadley, who's 39, ended up behind bars in 2016 after being falsely accused of a crime involving her ex, former U.S. Marshal Ian Diaz, and his then-wife Angela Connell Diaz. The twisted tale is now at the center of Netflix's new documentary called A Toxic Love Story. At the time, Ian and Angela claimed they were receiving death threats, cyber-stalking messages, and images of decapitated fetuses from a Lilith Truths user that they thought was Hadley. The newly married couple also claimed Hadley was posing as Angela on Craigslist and responding to rape fantasy ads to lure men to her home to sexually assault her. The Anaheim Police Department eventually arrested and imprisoned Hadley, only to learn months later that Ian and Angela were in fact the ones who puppeteered the stalking and harassment scheme. Hadley was then exonerated in January of 2017. That month, Angela pleaded guilty to all charges, including fraud, false imprisonment, and falsely reporting a crime. She later was sentenced to 5 years in prison. By June of 23, Ian was also sentenced to 10 years and 1 month in prison for conspiracy to commit cyberstalking, perjury, and obstruction of justice. So, Hadley discusses the traumatic ordeal, the red flags she saw in Ian, and what her life has been like. First question, why did you want to be part of this documentary and revisit such a traumatic chapter in your life? Her answer is, I never felt like I really had a chance to reclaim the narrative, and most importantly, to tell the story about the domestic abuse that I experienced in this relationship. This documentary was an opportunity for me to partner with a production company that was just as committed as I am to telling the story in a way that would uplift survivors of domestic abuse. Question, in your opinion, what percentage of this cyber-stalking hoax was Ian's doing? How much do you think Angela played a part? We don't really know what was going on behind closed doors. I do know that Ian was extremely controlling, extremely manipulative. I have no doubts from the moment that this whole thing started happening, even while I was in it, that he was the one driving this whole thing. He was the mastermind. Question, you mentioned some concerning behaviors in Ian while you were dating. What were those red flags you may have overlooked? I'm much older and much wiser now, but there were a few things that I realized. One is how quickly the relationship progressed. The other thing is you should really be evaluating the person sitting across from you, especially if you're the woman dating the man. If he has a level of respect for the opposite sex, pay really close attention to how they talk about women in general. That's very interesting, the question, considering one of the key voices in this documentary is Leslie, a female friend of Ian's for 20 years. Did Ian speak in a derogatory way about her? The answer, he would come back from time spent with Leslie and do nothing but say negative things about her. I never had any jealousy about her relationship because for me, I was seeing the flip side of it, which I don't think she ever saw, to be honest. In retrospect, I look back and I realized what a huge red flag that was. Question, have you heard from Ian or Angela since it unfolded? No, and to be honest, I've reached a point in my healing journey where I'm not living for the apology. Question, after being exonerated, what was it like finding a job? It's almost impossible to find work after it happened. Before, I had no trouble finding work at all, anytime I needed to find work, but afterwards, I see a noticeable difference. Question, have you been able to re-enter the dating pool? Well, it's something I've had to be really on guard with and just be very careful who I let into my world because I've had such bad experiences. And final question. You gave birth to your daughter the same day Ian was convicted in 2023. What's it been like raising her? The biggest trip up for a lot of women is that we're trained to defer or to default what men say, and it it makes you much more susceptible to abuse. So if I can just teach her to rely on her own instincts, trust what she sees, trust what she feels, be confident, that's one of the most powerful things I can give her as a mom.
Carly Simon reveals her Parkinson's diagnosis. Carly Simon has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Simon, the beloved pop rocker, known for 70s hits including You're So Vain, Nobody Does It Better, and Mockingbird, made the health revelation on July 27th. So many people have written to me kind of wondering what's happening, and the truth is I've been learning how to live with Parkinson's disease, said Simon, who's 83 years old. It's taken me some time to understand the diagnosis, to adjust to it, and decide how much I wanted to say about it publicly. Parkinson's disease is a degenerative syndrome that results in the slow loss of brain circuitry involved in the movement, cognition, and behavior. It can cause tremors, stiffness, slowness, and falls, in addition to anxiety, depression, and sleep dysfunction. Parkinson's is different for everyone, and it can be unpredictable, said Simon, whose battle with the disease began with arthritis in the knees and one of her hips. Some days I'm so tired I can't get the day moving at all. On other days, it gives me a little more room to move, think, work, and feel like myself. She says she's had 3 replacement surgeries to treat her damaged joints, but her mobility continues to worsen. I've had trouble standing up from low chairs. Parkinson's is incurable, according to the Mayo Clinic, but various medicines and treatments can help manage the symptoms. There's no tidy or predictable schedule to the illness, Simon said. It does not consult my calendar before deciding what kind of day I'm going to have. The singer also shared she had surgery for basal cell carcinoma amid her Parkinson's diagnosis and treatment. It was the most common form of skin cancer. And during this period, I was treated for cancer on my face. The cancer was removed, but the surgery affected my appearance and made me more self-conscious about being seen in public. I've always been more critical of my appearance than anyone else could possibly imagine. In addition to her physical symptoms, the singer has also candor on the mental toll of living with Parkinson's disease, which can include anxiety, depression, exhaustion, and apathy. The apathy is particularly strange, she said. You can find yourself lying like a starfish, drying in the sun, arms pointing in all directions, while nothing inside you is telling you to get up, read, watch, write, sing, call someone, or do much of anything at all. That's one of the hardest things to explain. It's not simply sadness or laziness. It's a part of the brain that sends out invitations to participate in life has temporarily misplaced the guest list. So she's maintained a low profile in recent years, stepping back. Because my mobility issues, Parkinson's disease, the surge in emotional effects, withdrawing the public view was the most palatable reaction.
Michael J. Fox is still bringing the fight to Parkinson's. When 29-year-old Michael J. Fox was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, just as his acting career was in full swing, everything else seemed silly. It had been a little more than a decade since he'd arrived in Hollywood, age 17, and he made the decision to shift his focus from acing auditions to recognizing that he had a unique opportunity to make a difference and do something bigger than just tell a joke. You think about a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old kid. You want to be rich and famous and change the world, and you want to be the big it thing, this 65-year-old tells USA Today. And when you start to search for a cure for disease, well, that stuff then is just so silly. The point where it got boring and tedious turned into a lever to operate a much bigger machine. On July the 22nd, the actor's Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research was one of 3 honorees at the Hollywood Reporters and Social Impact Fund's 3rd annual Social Impact Summit, alongside John Mayer's Heart and Armor Foundation for Veterans Health and Stephen and Aisha Curry's Eat, Learn, Play Foundation. Fox and his foundation CEO, Deborah Brooks, spoke with USA Today's Backstage before his shrinking co-star Harrison Ford presented the two with the Philanthropic Organization of the Year award. Now, his latest accolade, which arrives on the heels of his 19th Emmy nomination, it comes courtesy of the Social Impact Fund, a nonprofit organization founded in 2013 that helps overcome common administrative barriers for philanthropic endeavors in the entertainment industry and beyond by providing a legal structure for organizations, including for those whose tax-exempt status is pending. The organization has administered more than $135 million in charitable funds across more than 80 fiscally sponsored projects, with current partners including John Legend, Kerry Washington, Ryan Reynolds, and Alicia Keys. Since 2000, Fox's foundation reportedly has funded $3 billion in Parkinson's research, while also successfully advocating for resources at the federal level and helping advance breakthrough scientific discoveries, such as a crucial spinal fluid test for those exhibiting symptoms of this disease. Now, ultimately, they are working toward a goal of eliminating the disease in our lifetime. Fox went from hiding Parkinson's to becoming part of the answer. He wasn't always accepting of his diagnosis, discovered after he noticed a tremor in his pinky finger back in '91. It took some time to become, as he described his co-star, the most stubborn optimist I know, but by that time, he let the world in on his chronic condition. He'd had the revelation that, I want to be part of the answer, he said. The fastest growing neurodegenerative condition in the U.S., Parkinson's is an incurable brain disorder, a progressive disease that causes unintended or uncontrolled movements like shaking, stiffness, difficulty with balance, and coordination. I was diagnosed and I went into a hidden retreat. I hid for 7 years and didn't tell anyone. But then it occurred to me that I might go public with it. I weighed that with my wife and myself and had a lot of conversations, he says, and I realized it was a unique opportunity. Less than a decade after receiving his diagnosis, this Family Ties actor came to embrace the role of being the face of Parkinson's. Fox's expletive-laden motto for Parkinson's patients: beyond finding a cure, science is hard, he says. He hopes to give the patient community a say and a presence. They're scared to death, he says. That's a freaky diagnosis that rocks your world. The average Parkinson patient is in their early to mid-60s, according to the Neurological Disorders and Stroke Institute. A small percent of those diagnosed have early onset Parkinson's, which does begin before 50. Now, symptoms of the progressive movement disorder typically include tremors, muscle stiffness, balance issues, and slowed movement. It has taken a toll on this Back to Future star over the decades. He developed and recovered from alcohol addiction while coping with his diagnosis. He's had a number of broken bones. He's in pain all the time, he said on his documentary. When asked about representation of Parkinson's patients in Hollywood, he brings up Apple TV's Shrinking, in which Ford's Paul Rhodes, a therapist diagnosed with Parkinson's in season 1, gets the ensemble cast on board with the motto, blankety blank, expletive, Parkinson's. Fox, who's playing a patient named Jerry, eventually becomes part of Paul's journey. Now, echoing Paul's refrain, Fox says, for a long time I've been saying expletive, vanity. It's not about vanity. It's not about how you look. And that's the thing that helps these patients move forward in their minds. They say, this is what it is.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:42. Here's an article about movies, in particular Odysseus. Reality and fiction collide inside the Trojan horse. Imagine you're crammed inside a 40-foot tall wooden horse with 20 other guys on a beach. They might sound like the antithesis of Hollywood glamour, but in the words of John Barenthal, it was glorious. The Marvel actor co-stars with Matt Damon and Tom Holland in The Odyssey in theaters, Christopher Nolan's big-budget retelling of Homer's epic poem. In a nerve-jangling early scene, Ithacan king Odysseus, played by Damon, and Spartan ruler Menelaus, played by Bernthal, steel themselves inside a colossal Trojan horse, along with more than a dozen other soldiers, as part of an intricate plot to hide and launch a surprise attack on Troy. Mistaking the horse for a gift, the Trojan officers drag it inside the walls of their kingdom, only for Odysseus' men to jump out and rampage the city come nightfall. To film the sequence, the actors spent numerous hours inside the contraption, alongside Nolan and cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema. I loved it, Bernthal said. You better believe Chris was in there with us. There's no one working harder than him. Although the Trojan horse was, in fact, fictional, you get a real sense of how insane that experience would be. What it's like to be moved, what it's like to have it filling up with ice-cold water and having to be quiet. The looks of the folks I was in there with and their discomfort at times, I remember it well. The Odyssey is a star-studded, globe-trotting saga that filmed in 6 countries, including Greece and Iceland, across a 6-month period. The chance to work with Nolan for the first time was a pinch-yourself moment for Bernthal, who's 49 years old, and who met Nolan at the director's home, not knowing the specifics of the project. I talked to a couple different people in the know who told me he was doing a remake of Blue Thunder, that helicopter movie from the 80s. Bernthal recalls laughing. It was so shrouded in mystery and secrecy. Menelaus, the husband of Helen, played by Lupita Nyong'o, becomes a key resource for the young Telemachus, who's played by Holland, as he searches for answers about the fate of his missing father, Odysseus. Bernthal's biggest scenes are flashbacks to the Trojan War, as Menelaus and his army wreak bloody havoc on Troy that haunts Odysseus for many years after. The Siege of Troy was filmed over multiple nights with more than 2,000 extras. Bernthal commends the movie's well-rehearsed action sequences with fighting that felt extremely visceral, yet completely safe for the actors. It created this real sense of danger on the set, Bernthal recalls. It was genuinely scary, no acting necessary. Coming out of the horse and the battle that ensues in the Trojan War, it was complete and utter chaos. You felt it, but nobody got hurt. You have to have reckless abandonment and let it all go. But you also have to know exactly what you're doing. That marriage is when you get something really electric. Bernthal, the star of The Bear, similarly phrases the film's leading man, Damon, with whom he previously worked on Ford versus Ferrari. The actors bonded as both dads and husbands, and it also shared in their shared awe over what Nolan had created. I remember my first day in Morocco on that beach with all those ships and thousands of background actors, and you see the size and scope of the film immediately, Bernthal says. You don't see a ton of crew members running around. It's just all what's going to be on the screen. I ran into Matt, and he was wide-eyed, and this is Matt Damon. I looked him in his eyes and said, "Holy blank, blank, blank. Bernthal, this is huge. I've never seen anything like it." Bernthal adds, there was a childlike wonder that was palpable every single day.
And now we have Alone in the Open Ocean. I borrowed their bravery. This swimmer goes the distance for cancer survivors. One of the ultra-marathon swimmer, Maya Merhige, that's Merhige, her biggest fears is jellyfish. Yet, she willingly spends hours swimming through some of the world's largest and most dangerous bodies of waters. Why does she do it? Because she swims for those who can't. Every time Maya jumps into this freezing water surrounded by sharks and jellyfish, while she's raising money for cancer research and patient programs through the nonprofit called Swim Across America. If those patients can do cancer treatment, if those 7-year-olds and 4-year-olds can go through a day of cancer treatment, then I can most definitely swim another 20 strokes, she says. So far, Maya, who's 18, has raised more than $172,000 for cancer research. She aims to become the youngest person to complete the Ocean's 7 Challenge. Now, that's a series of the world's 7 most difficult open water swims. The record now belongs to Caitlin O'Reilly, who completed that challenge at 20 years old, 227 days. Now, on July 8th, Maya completed the 5th swim of the challenge. That was the 21.4-mile crossing of the North Channel from Ireland to Scotland. Battling 50-degree water, powerful tides, and jellyfish stings, she finished in 12 hours, 19 minutes, 37 seconds. This swim, it held special significance for Maya. It took place exactly a year after she had major surgery. After a ski accident back in 23, doctors discovered a benign tumor in her pancreas that led to several years of hospital visits and some surgeries. I think it completely changed my perspective and my understanding of what cancer experience is like, she says. The fact that I can do this and I'm healthy enough to do this, I shouldn't take advantage of that, she says. Before Maya began this Ocean 7 challenge, she became the youngest woman to swim the width of Lake Tahoe at just 13 years old. She then began the challenge with the Catalina Channel as a freshman in high school, becoming the youngest woman to complete the 20-mile swim at age of 14. Then, 1 year later, she became the youngest person to complete the Molokai Channel swim, that's in Hawaii, at age of 15. She followed that by crossing the Cook Strait in New Zealand, the English Channel, and the Molokai Channel. But those feats didn't come easily, she says. It took me a long time, until maybe a year ago, to really be okay with not having a lot of control. That really scared me at the beginning, the feeling of being so small in such a huge body of water. Now, each swim must be completed solo and unassisted. Swimmers cannot touch a buoy, the boat, or any passengers. Every 30 minutes, Maya is handed a bottle of water on a rope that's filled with carbohydrates so she can stay fueled, even though that can be difficult when she begins to feel sick. Now, despite the physical challenges, Maya says, the mental challenge, that's even greater. I have swum for a long time, so I know that I physically can. It's much more of a mental thing to be like, how can I continue doing this and not stress myself out? The Molokai Channel swim was the toughest of the 5 swims, she says, physically and mentally. She was in the water for 28 hours. Now, that's nearly twice as long as she and her crew had expected. That was the only time I've ever been in the water and been like, why do I do this, she says. But whenever she questions her decision to continue, she just reminds herself for whom she is swimming. Before every single swim, Maya writes the names of those who have or are fighting cancer on her swim cap, from family members to friends, even cancer patients that she doesn't know. Each name, it serves as a reminder of why she just keeps going. Maya has 2 swims remaining now to complete this Ocean's 7 challenge. She's scheduled to swim the Strait of Gibraltar in August and then complete the Tsugaru Strait in Japan next year. Both of them would be before her 20th birthday. Before each swim, she'll write the names of cancer patients and survivors right across her cap, just as she always does. I like to say that I borrow their bravery. And they have a nice picture of her. You can see her from the back. She's waving her hand in the air. She's on a whole swimsuit and a swim cap looking out over the water. And her caption reads, if children can battle through cancer, then I can most definitely swim another 20 strokes, Maya says.
Oh, and Cracker Barrel is selling its Maple Street Biscuit Company, closing its some sites. Cracker Barrel sold its Maple Street Biscuit Company brand in 35 restaurants to Biscuit Belly LLC and will close 16 locations of the fast casual breakfast chain. The move comes less than a year after Cracker Barrel closed 14 Maple Street locations in September of 2025 because they simply didn't meet our financial expectations. Cracker Barrel acquired Maple Street Biscuit in 2019 for $36 million, and the breakfast chain was founded in Jacksonville, Florida in 2012, and serves a variety of biscuits and other breakfast foods. At the time of the acquisition, they had 28 company locations and 5 franchise locations. In a separate move, Cracker Barrel also completed a sale leaseback deal involving 26 company locations. And that means Cracker Barrel sold the locations to an investor and immediately leased them back. Cracker Barrel said these transactions will generate approximately $77 million in net proceeds. And here comes the Lifeline column. They said what? The Star's best quotes. I think the hardest thing about grief is that people, they move on. But for us, because we're his wife and child, there's no moving on. There's moving with and living with. He will always be a part of our everyday, said Tanisha Warner, Malcolm Jamal Warner's widow, as she opened up an emotional interview on CBS Mornings, speaking with Gayle King to mark the 1-year anniversary of The Cosby Show actor's death at only 54 years old. She called his passing unfair. The Emmy nominee died from an accidental drowning in Costa Rica. It's your birthday. Who's celebrating their birthday today? Cartoonist Jim Davis turns 81. Activist Sally Struthers turns 79. Musician Gerald Casale of Devo is 78. News anchor Scott Pelley is 69. Actor Lori Loughlin is 62. Singer Priscilla Chan is 61. Actor Elizabeth Berkley is 54. Rapper Afro Man is 52. Singer Jacoby Shaddix of Papa Roach is 50. Actor John David Washington is 42. And rapper Soulja Boy is 36. Here's the horoscopes. Aries, are you getting your way? The care and precision you desire may be disrupted by restless mental energy. Taurus, you may feel torn between what feels good and what's responsible. Is it time to get your priorities straight? Gemini, are you the one rocking the boat? Pursuing personal desires can disturb the peace at home. Cancer. You think you're saying the right thing, but it may come out wrong today. Communication's getting complicated. Leo. Are you doing it for yourself or for the approval of others? Check your motivations. Virgo. The outside world may seem extra pushy today. Are external demands harshing your vibe? Prepare for a little friction. Libra. Feeling restless and scattered? Venus confronting Mars today can frazzle your energy when all you want is peace. Scorpio. Finding it hard to be social? Underlying emotional tension may get in the way of connecting freely with others. Sagittarius. Professional relationships may get heated today. Watch what you say while Venus squares off with Mars. Remember what's at stake. Capricorn. You have the vision you desire, but are you struggling with follow through? Tighten up your game. Aquarius. Finding it hard to voice what you want? Intimacy can feel strained. Pisces. A relationship may encroach on your personal comfort zone today. Will you pull them in or push them away? Well, you've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Tuesday, July 28th of 2026. We read USA Today weekday at noon. For more information, call 821-5555. Your readers today have been
Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability